How to paint hydrangea with watercolors. This tutorial is part 1 of applying first layers and getting volume and realistic look to the hydrangea flower head. An outline drawing is done, and we'll be removing the excess amount of graphite with an elastic eraser. This is very light subject, so it is important to remove as much as possible so there are no very obvious graphite marks visible through the watercolor layers. Especially the outer petals, they are the lightest ones. Very lightly erase as much as possible so you can see markings. Now let's start mixing colors, adding water to color palette. And as this subject is pink, I'm starting with permanent rose, adding to my color palette. But this is not just pink, there are some other pigments as well, and I'm adding manganese violet to get that pink a little bit more to the violet side, testing on a piece of paper and comparing with your reference if the color is correct. Second mix, I'm taking Perylene Violet with permanent rose for the darker parts. Also testing on a piece of paper, adjusting pigments, adding a little bit more of Perylene Violet. I will be using quite a lot of Perylene Violet during this painting. Next one is Perylene Maroon with permanent rose for more warmer shadow parts. Just a few areas will be requiring this color mix. And transparent yellow for those little edges which are starting to become old. Adding a little bit of main watercolor mix, permanent rose with manganese violet. Now we can start painting. I will be painting one petal at a time, applying water with my finest brush because those areas are small, and each petal, each section separately. This will be quite taking some time and a lot of patience from you, but the result is worth it. Loading brush with very transparent amount of watercolors and starting to apply from the darker area of the petal. I have my reference open on the other device. I also suggest for you to open the reference right beside you, beside the tutorial. Zoom in each petal. Follow each section individually. For the first layer it's very important, then we will be looking at the whole flower in general. But now, so we are not getting lost in all those little details, really zoom in each section separately while you are painting it. And while the area is moist with the tip of the brush, I'm moving watercolors towards the lightest part, which is outer edge of the petal. It is very important to paint first layer for this particular hydrangea flower very light. We see that it's quite saturated in the reference, but still the details and the background color for the petals is quite light. Here I'm taking transparent yellow, very small amount, and putting on the edge of that petal, which is slowly starting to fade away. Be sure that your layer is smooth. It's very easy while the surface is a little bit moist to smooth out the applied layer. As you can see, my petal has already tonal values from the darker and gradually going to the lighter, adding a little bit more of darkness, but everything is very transparent. In this painting, for this particular flower, it's not about technique, but about the patience and to apply very transparent layers. I'm skipping one petal and going to the next one, skipping one in between, so I'm not disturbing the edge line of the first one. Method is the same, applying very thin layer of water so it's slightly moist, And starting from the middle part, which is darker, I can see that in a reference. I'm constantly looking and comparing everything that I'm doing from the reference. To get realistic look, not just an illustration but a painting of hydrangea, we need to follow each detail, each petal, each section separately. Especially for the first layer, in the beginning, it is very crucial and very important. Don't rush things. If you feel the urge that you want to go darker, faster, take a break, go for a walk, drink a cup of tea, and come back with a more relaxed and fresh look. Here's the key to success: to be patient, to paint slowly, transparently with the tip of the brush. Control your brush strokes, be careful with the outer edge lines. Follow each petal on your reference photo. For example, this petal that I'm painting right now is curved and it has darker on the right and darker on the left. In the middle part there is a light area. So I'm really following each petal in the reference. Now I'm speeding up the process of painting this hydrangea flower. The technique I explained is just a matter of patience and slowly moving forward one petal at a time. Full tutorial of part 1 is on my Patreon and it is almost 2 hours long, showing you the process of the first and second layers to this hydrangea flower head painting, explaining techniques, explaining how I approach this painting process, what are the challenges, what are the solutions. I'm slowly reaching the finishing stage of part 1 of this hydrangea flower painting, and I will continue to add more gradual contrast to the darker parts, and in part 2 we will be painting a little bit more of veins, the center pieces, the center parts, add some extra details, make those edge lines more precise. It will be more of a cleanup. This is a really big and rich subject, so there will be a lot of cleaning things to do. It's when you are really going more deeper into the painting process and thinking about how those edge lines look, where are the cast shadows, the dark, some extra maybe darkness to the very, very deeper parts between the petals. But here I will be painting maybe for another hour, maybe hour and a half. We'll add still those gradual layers to some darker parts. I also suggest you on your own paint further, push yourself a little bit further to make a little bit more contrast to the darker parts, but be careful, really careful not to overdo it. It's better to do less here than do more. This is the subject where you really need to think when to proceed and when to stop. At this stage you can go, but with transparent layers. For example, if this would be a very dark hydrangea, yeah, then we can paint on and on. But this is a very light one, and we really need to control. Don't touch those lightest parts. Work more on the darker areas which are really visible, that needs more contrast, more darkness. So this is it for part 1. Paint a little bit on your own. You can also stop, and in part 2 we will continue with the flower head painting. Thank you, and see you in my next tutorial. Bye bye.